Ward, aye.
Clef, aye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Item 2, announcements. I have a couple of announcements. Just a reminder to all of you that on the 4th of July, our Lions Club has their celebration here at the Veterans Park. Starts at 7 o'clock with breakfast, and then games and activities, and then lunch and an auction. And it's been going for about 60, 65 years. Maybe longer, Carmen? I just remembered my dad was one of the original Lions, and he's 87. So somewhere between 60 and 100 Lions Clubs have been around. They actually poured all the concrete on the basketball court out there, and they built the first Little League baseball field up there by the cemetery. So they've done a lot for our community, and we would ask you to support them if you could on the 4th of July. It'll only be 103. So cold spell. And then we received some letters from some second graders, is that right, Kimberly? On the Cotton Days activity to the mayor and the city council. And I just want to read one of them to you. Dear Mayor and City Council members, I hope you keep all the old stuff and keep showing it to the second graders so they can see what we saw. It was so cool but scary to go up and down the stairs because it was old. But the girl said we wouldn't fall. So I don't know why I was so scared. I guess it was just too old for me. We love Cotton Days. Thank you. Love, Elena Ito. So we have about 15 or 20 of them here. And we thank those young second graders for sending us these little letters, and we appreciate that. So we'll move on to item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Anything to declare at this time, council? All right, then we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda. Approval of the minutes, consideration to approve the minutes from the city council meetings of 6/12/18 and 6/13/18.
Extension is part of that as well.
B.
I don't have a lease extension on this. Well, mine doesn't have that, but item B, lease extension, consideration of approving a lease extension between Washington City Community Center and Weight Watchers LLC. Thank you.
Mayor, if there's no discussion about our consent agenda, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as has been outlined.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Granger, aye.
Clef, aye. Ward, aye.
Thank you. That is approved. Move on to item 5, our youth council. Good to see you all here. Probably some of those folks are out there are your parents, right? Maybe. They might have a little interest in you a bit, but we appreciate you wanting to join our youth city council. It's always been fun, and it's always been, I believe, a good learning experience, and we've appreciated it. Appreciate Carmen so much for her diligence and effort and love of these children. So I'll turn the time over to you, Carmen, and Denise to swear in our new youth city council members.
Thank you, Mayor. We are so excited. We're starting our 9th year as City Council, Washington City Council leadership. Oh my word, I'm so nervous I get in front of you important people. I can talk to my youth, but I can't talk to you guys. You're so awesome. Anyway, this is our 9th year for Washington City Youth Council. And every year we have so many kids put their names in to apply. And this year was no exception. And I promised you we would reduce. We did by 2. I'm sorry, because every one of these youth that come are so special. They really are. They're this youth of the area that wants to give of themselves. And it was a really hard process this year. Dan was very impressed with the way it was handled.
It was amazing.
It was amazing because there was so many out there that all qualified. It was just like so close. But we've got a great group, and those that were able to be here today, we're going to install, if that's okay.
You bet.
And we've also asked their parents to come. And I'm going to have Caleb Adams. Caleb, is your parents here? Is Mark and Eliza here? Could you please stand? Okay, you can need to come up. You'll just stand here. Okay. Cooper Stone Despain. Camille, is she here?
Dad's here.
Dad.
There's
Oh,
Dad.
I don't have Dad's name. What's Dad's name? Sam the man. Good, Sam's here. Brooke
He is
Hall.
how did you know that? He is the man.
He's the man. Brooke Hall. And her mom and dad are Jeff and Crystal. You please stand. Joshua Hardman is not able to be here today, and his mom and dad are Greg and Jill.
Yeah.
Carter, Michael, Libby. Oh, excuse me. He's not here. Chad and Jennifer are his parents. Grace, Adeline Olson. Grace. Her mom and dad are Brian and Sherry. And I'm so excited because with them today is Trent, that just got home off the mission. He was in our youth council. And
Well, that's right.
yeah, so he's here today to watch Grace get installed. And then Emily Diane Richardson, and her mom and dad are Diane and Leo. I think she can stand. And Eliza Kate Smith. Her mother is Heather. What's your dad? Kevin, I apologize. And guess who just got back? Is she here? Sarah's here. Sarah just barely got home off the airplane today, and she was in our youth council.
that's
She
right.
just got home off the mission. So it's really isn't this neat? Jeff knows. Jacob Sartson isn't able to be here today, and his mom and dad are Mark and Jacob. Oh, Jacob. I did it right by you. Mark, you're there. I apologize for that. Emma Dawn Ward isn't able to be here today. She had another meeting she had to be to, so she's a busy girl. So Doug, you could stand. You're the dad. Doug and Billy, that's her parents. And then Mackenzie Marie Welch. Is she Mackenzie? Her parents are Roxanne. So if
You have
you'd
two
like,
more.
well, those are
Oh, are you-
they're not the new
oh,
ones.
they're not the rookies. That's
They're
right.
supporting us.
That's right.
But we'll let them stand. If you kids want to stand,
Yeah,
you
stand
can. Rebecca and Cambry.
Right, that's right.
Thank you for being here. Hey, where's my girl? Okay, all right. I'll turn the time over to Denise. Thank you, Denise.
Okay, you guys will kind of turn towards the audience, turn around and raise your right hand. State your names. Just stand up. Please. Your eyes are closed. Thank you. I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
That will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
I will also solemnly swear
I will also solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
I will support, obey, and defend
the laws and ordinances of Washington City,
the laws and ordinances of Washington City,
and that I will discharge the duties
and that I will discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations, everyone.
You're not done. Now you have to sign your life away now. You promise every other month to come to the mayor's house and mow his lawn.
You have a lawn, Mayor?
I have that front lawn and that back lawn. And I have a half acre back there you can pull the weeds too if you get real bored.
I thought you were going to get a goat one of these
I
days.
was, but we have an ordinance against that. I can have a chicken though.
He'll loan you one.
And I believe, Carmen, do we need to excuse you folks to go to your meeting? Is Carmen still here? Did you
Yeah,
pass out?
She's there.
Did you? Yes.
They're signing this. I'm solemnly verify the donations to Fan Club in our council. And he's done an amazing. I want to thank him, and I also want to thank you, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, parents, for allowing your children to participate. I think you'll see how wonderful of an experience you're going to enjoy, especially getting to meet the governor and lieutenant governor.
One of the things I'd just like to add for those parents who are supporting their youth into this youth council, it's a great opportunity for them to understand how a council works and the service they provide our community is very valuable. Obviously, Carmen is an amazing advisor. She will lead you in the right paths of how to make sure this is good. So if there's any questions, she'll help you out. If there is nothing else, Mayor, if we would like to just go ahead and divert your attention, there will be a continuation of what just happened in the swearing in of the youth council up at the Covington Mansion. So I'd like to invite all the parents and the youth to go ahead and go up to the Covington Mansion to finish off some explanation of what you're getting into. So thank you so much, Carmen.
200 North and 200 East, if you're not sure where it's at.
Wow. It's beautiful. I don't like guys like me on that course. I just tear them up. Divot holes and stuff.
Yeah, well. All right, thank you. Item 6, special events. Consideration to approve a special event for the first responders appreciation car show held at Washington City Community Center Friday, October 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. and Saturday, October 20th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Applicant Darren Nuttall. Darren here? I didn't see him. They held this last year. It was quite a successful event. Do they still plan on using the elementary school yard too?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
If there are any questions, I could probably take those on behalf of Darren because I've been working with him on this for several months. The one thing on our side that we had asked is that they change weekends from last year, just because the weekend they had it before was quite a busy weekend with other things at the community center. And he agreed to move it forward one weekend, which works better in our schedule. So, but otherwise it will be much the same as last year. Very successful event.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, it looks like they're really just using a portion of our parking lot. Most of it's at the school, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
With that, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve a special event for the First Responders Appreciation Car Show held at the Washington City Community Center on Friday, October 19th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Second.
And again
motion.
on Saturday, October
Excuse me,
20th from
oops.
9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sorry. I didn't see that last
Now second.
All right, good. I have a motion and a second.
Ward, aye.
Clough eye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you. Let Darren know that way, and thank you very much. Item 7, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Sunwood at Bella Vista, Phase 1, located approximately 150 South Bella Vista Drive. Applicant SJ Property Holding, LLC.
Here's a second here, Mayor. Will.
The applicant has stated is requesting approval of preliminary plat for Sunwood at Bella Vista. The applicant is proposing 40 lots and the area coverage is 7.259 acres. The zoning at this particular location is the Planned Unit Development Residential, PUDR. The surrounding zoning is PUD to the west, east, and south with RA2 and C2 to the north. This proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances at this location. Staff's reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their June 6th meeting where they held a public hearing. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Sunwood at Bella Vista Phase 1 subdivision. On to you, the City Council, and that's with the findings and conditions as you see in your report, and they're the standard 11 that we have for preliminary plats. I'll be glad to answer any questions that council might have on Sunwood at Bella Vista.
Drew, just, I know that's part of the PUD process. We had those lots on that back wall. I believe it was 15 through 9 that were noted as single story only.
Right.
Do we need to put that in the notes?
You know what? I think
That came up during the planning
it
commission.
did, and I might have failed to put that as a condition number 12, even though it is in the PUD. I think the planning commission request, part of their approval was to have lots. And I think, I can't remember if they added lot 8 or not, but I know they went from 8 or 9 down to 16 will all be single-story homes. Just want to make sure
I
that
think
you,
it'd be appropriate to have it from 8 through 16.
yeah.
When was it approved? The zoning, I'm trying to go back, just because I want to.
The zoning,
Some of the.
I think it was like about 3 or 4 months ago.
Oh, here we go. It was,
February, March.
3/28.
And I recall the original discussion, this is where I couldn't, maybe Councilman Belliston can help us where he's looking here, there, that portion where the storm drain and whatnot's going to leave the property and head to 300 East. Originally, there was some park amenities as part of that PUD
Correct.
and whatnot there. I noticed that they're not on this.
Well, they generally won't. I mean, it's part of the PUD in this particular area. They're working out the design on this storm drain to try to do
Okay,
use it as a usable park area that we've talked about in previous,
okay.
You know,
Just wanna
things
make
that
sure
turn
we're
that.
Still on.
well, yeah, no, they'll have to follow that PUD in the approval. So that amenity will have to go in with some barbecue. I think there was some barbecue
Yeah.
things with,
The main thing that to me is most important probably is that trail system that leads out of that and goes over to 300. This kind of ties that, especially with these anticipated uses in here, that trail to me would be a great amenity to tie across for us. Get over to the dog park and some of those other amenities there.
Some of those living just across the fence from this development were saying they weren't sure they wanted to park there. It might be noisy or whatever, but it's really just a small neighborhood park. And I don't think we ever took it off the,
no, it was
What's the
approved
way-
with that amenity there. Like I said, I think there was 2 gazebos with some barbecue pits, and then I think they had a shuffleboard or something. They just have to make sure they got a recreation area there. So,
I don't think we defined what it needed to be, but we did put in it that driveways are all gonna have to be set back 20 feet to account for
Right.
parking. And these are showing a buildable area setback 10. So they'll either have to offset those garages.
yeah, and that's the thing is that this pad is their ownership, and they'll have to have they know they're going to have a 20-foot driveway, you know, minimum off of that. So off of the private street.
there, some things that I'll look for. Maybe it belongs in the final plat and not this one, but let me just mention them. Sidewalks is one I think we've talked about before. What the construction of the siding and the roof are. I personally think that when we build small units like this, one of the things that's always missing is adequate storage, and that's never going to be okay. Never be enough. But the cheapest building we can do is to slightly oversize those garages so that there can be some storage in the back and on the sides, and that when you open your car door, you're not slamming into another car. I don't know if we've set a minimum for garages, but I would really like us to talk about the size of the garages so that they can actually be useful and not be filled with things that there actually is room for them to put some small amount of storage, especially as we anticipate some of these might be beginning families. I think that storage becomes critical. I'd like to see if they can't incorporate some of that into their design, and also a hidden garbage area, whether it's a little shed or a fence that sort of blocks it off, and then also a larger garbage area where they can take their large things at one end of that subdivision or the other. Maybe it could even be down by the park. I don't know, but it does seem like we ought to have at least one larger garbage area. I don't think any of these homes will have room for the 2 or 3 garbages that many of us have. So they need some place to put things. So just some some thoughts that I think are critical. And then obviously, is this going to be under an HOA, a professional HOA?
Well, it'll have to be under, I don't know if it'll be professional, but because there's common area, it'll have to have an HOA. All these areas that's in between the homes is common, and that'll have to be always under an HOA's directive.
So will we see some response to some of these things before we do the final plat?
Probably not per se on that. That's when your PUD, if, you know, that's when you want to bring all those kind of specifics up. That's not really, unfortunately, tied with platting and subdividing or those things. So, but in a PUD, you have every option to, opportunity to do
Well, some of that
that.
was addressed in the PUD, particularly as you meant the construction materials.
Oh, yeah, no, you
stuff,
approved the
as long
design
as
on
we're-
those homes, you know,
Yeah, that was
the
part of the
elevations
PUD.
you've already seen. That are already approved, the look of them. This is the one that was kind of a craftsman style home. It had 4 different elevations to give you on that for these options on these particular pads.
But we, at that point, we wouldn't have got into the specifics of, you know, are we going to have additional dumpster area or something like that? That would have
Right.
come at this point.
No,
Not necessarily, yeah.
it should be under the PUD at that time. Yeah,
Well,
because we don't have anybody else, we don't talk about, you know, with any other subdivision that we do, you know, they are required to go to the solid waste, and either that, they'll dictate how they want to pick up people's garbage. They'll either say, this is an area because of too much for our trucks, we want to have it centrally located in a dumpster. Or if they can, they actually prefer to try to pick up individually with the canisters. And this will be a canister pickup on this particular
I would
one.
think both, maybe. I think they need it. Isn't this part of the PUD?
This is.
Yes.
Did we approve the overall PUD?
Well, part of it.
Well, you approved this part, you actually approved this part, and then you approved the triplexes that go down Bonnie Lane. They're just, this is the one they're going to tackle first is this particular, there's actually homes south of this red dotted line that were approved as well, but they're the same kind of single family detached homes that'll be coming at a future
They just
date
come
down
in a later
here.
phase.
What's that?
They'll just come in a later phase.
They'll just come in a later
plat.
phase. Yeah. My concern is that we are approved a PUD with all the design and everything. Now, if I come back, I'm not sure where we would put the dumpsters in this particular design.
Well, I don't think that's, I mean, you look at Horizons West next to it, which is the same lot size as we're talking here, and they have each individual canisters. They don't have a dumpster. So I don't know that we'd want a dumpster in there, to be honest with you. I don't know where you
Kind
put
of
it.
just, kind of just came up as an issue because of another project to the north where they really didn't have areas for their stuff.
Well, like I said, I
Kind of
think with
issue
this
there.
one, that we've done a pretty good job in planning the size of the lot, how they lay out to where they're individual homes. Or if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's more of a multifamily setup.
So what I'm hearing is some of these considerations are too late in the process.
Yeah, the garbage thing, maybe not, but I can tell you about the design on the homes and everything. That's the time you got to do it. It's at PUD, stage.
How about the size of the garages? Sidewalks? I thought we talked about sidewalks.
I think we addressed the sidewalks on those triplexes. As I recall, the sidewalks down with the triplexes and stuff we did make some discussion there. Now, I think we looked at this one here where it was going to be those smaller streets and whatnot and figured the frontage was, as I recall that discussion.
Can you bring, I think they had some street designs, Troy. Do you have, was that on the PUD? I'm
Street designs?
We talked about
They
it.
should have a little bit of.
There
a
should have been
profile. Yeah, they do.
two or three. Actually, there's probably 3 designs on their PUD. I
Yep,
think.
hang on. All right, now I got to figure out how to take over.
You tell me the date, I can go find it if you want.
Council Apple TV.
There you go. Now just click on the one
It's
up
almost like I
there.
know what I'm doing.
So good. It's a privilege to sit next to you.
So they're showing you what 1100 East is going to be with the sidewalk on one side. The 34-foot private streets you can see was approved in their PUD right there.
Gutters on each side.
with no sidewalks, which we've done in others in the past. And I think, did they have a 50-foot standard one in there, Troy, or not?
I'm not seeing it on this,
I don't know if it was in one of the other.
but these were the elevations that came up.
Yeah, there's your elevations with the 2-car
It doesn't
garage.
give dimensions on the garages, but I think minimum is typically 20 by 20, though I think that's a little small.
Well, I think the overall, what you're looking for is a project that will stand the test of time and age well and serve our community as a beautiful addition. I can see the concerns of some of the citizens, and I can see some of the concerns like Councilwoman Granger brought up. I'm just lucky to get here some days.
Was this in one we, in the PUD, we discussed as soon as they hit the 30 residents, that they would be making sure 11th, is that east right there?
They got dual outlet.
Yeah.
No, it's the other side.
Yeah, the triplexes are where that 30 would kick in.
That's where that would kick in, but not in
Secondary
this
access.
particular area.
Not on this one, because
This one's
they're
fine.
fine. It's just as they go to the east.
Okay.
You're gonna have
But I
that
was just
secondary
making sure
access
these-
coming out.
Okay. So that won't kick in until they build the triplexes. Okay.
Any other discussion?
No, but sometime in the future, I'd love for us to discuss a little bit about the size of garages and see if we have a standard minimum.
I'll see if I can't find something from.
You done, Councilman Belson? Can I jump back and
Sure.
push you down? Any other questions for me?
Mayor, if there's no other questions or discussion.
Well, sorry, I'm just trying to get because we have had some obvious confusion about the council and the PUDs are a little bit new. I suggest we maybe take this as an opportunity to make sure we're pretty well set with this process. So beyond what it was decided in the PUD process and the acceptance there, what latitudes what difference are we actually looking at here that was not already discussed in the PUD?
Just bringing forward the same layout that
Right.
was approved
Right.
for preliminary plat. I don't see anything on this
Yeah, there's nothing.
that's changed that we would need to really try to tweak at this point. We approved their overall layout for this phase.
I think the overall concern that I think that is somewhat changed, like to be verified, is the concept of that water retention area. I know it will be possibly that dual use of a park or who knows, whatever. That's about the only thing that I've seen change on it. Everything else conforms with what they proposed.
Well, if the park's part of the preliminary plat too, we probably ought to see some design on that, shouldn't we?
And that's one of my concerns on this, if it's to go forward.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but when those building elevations are approved, it's the staff that goes out and makes sure that as buildings are going up, they conform to what was approved. You know, the park generally conforms to what was approved. things like
Right.
that. I do think that when these preliminary plats come forward, if we've approved set elevations or, such and such overall general plan, it'd be nice to have it in the same packet so we can refer back to it instead of having to try to go back 4 months and figure out what was discussed at that point. It could help us for reference.
Well, I guess my larger point is just to make sure that this PUD process is a little bit new and slightly changed.
Well, the
We
PUD
make sure-
process itself isn't.
I
isn't-
get
some of-
that, but
some
I'm
of the
not
others
the
are.
only
This
one
isn't.
who was a little bit misunderstood as far as what we were approving at the last time this came before us. And I thought that the elevations that they were looking at were suggestions, and we were not locking into those.
Anytime in a PUD process that they present elevations, most of the time, I shouldn't say anytime, most of the time you are locking them in when you approve them. Sometimes you can say, we don't want to lock you into those elevations, generally speaking. You make that general.
I guess, and again, they've been back and forth, so there's a lot to remember on this particular project, but I didn't remember that any of their statements were saying that we were locking ourselves into these elevations, let alone.
And some of that may have been just yourself being a little new to the process, and maybe that's not being totally clear with that.
Doesn't sound like I'm the only one, though.
No, that may be.
And I agree.
Part of the reason I like PUDs is because you do get to lock them in the process. That's the beauty of it, is you get to be part of the plan and say, you know what? Yeah, I want red roofs on all of these. And you get to say that to them. And that's part of the process that you get to be a part of it. So,
well, I guess that's why I'm extending this part of and interrupting your motion, because I want to make sure we're clear as a council going forward. And we have kind of pushed the PUD process as a benefit here. I've had that concern.
And some are not going to come in with elevations depending on the project.
depending on the type of project.
But in this case, this is what they proposed, and this is what we agreed to in March on only the style of elevation or style of wall.
To give you an idea, when I go out and I'm going to look at these homes, and I'm going to come up, because they have these floor plans, they went and found this is the home they want to build that fits on their lot. Now, when I show up, and if that maroon area back there's one or two hues one way or the other, I'm not going to sit and put the stop work order on it. If I show up and that's a neon blue, I'm going to put a stop work order on it. Or a neon green, something that's not near that. If I show up and it's a gray slate roof, or it's a gray, architectural grade shingle, I'm going to be fine with it. Now, if I show up and it's, again, some odd color that is really quite different than this, I'm going to say, hold on here a minute. You're going to have to go back before the council, and they're going to have to approve your color schemes now.
Well, appreciate that clarification. I guess I'm looking more generally at the PUD process because it's always been a concern of mine as the PUDs come in, that there's a lot to cover and a lot to address for the council. Especially, some of them come in as an entire project, some of them come in just as a little piece, to make sure that because we did discuss sidewalks, we did discuss parks. I'm not sure that roofing was one of those things that we talked about, but it was brought up by others, and it does strengthen the project, and it does help it blend to the area.
We spent a lot of time on the trail sidewalk that goes through.
We did.
We did.
And it's across the street from what we're looking at right now. So that's correct.
But in other cases, we've talked about sidewalks and what they bring to the area, and how they stabilize and finish off a neighborhood so it's walkable and usable. I mean, we're not talking about just the day it sells. We get to live this forever.
Roads, we can start the development checklist. I think we do develop a checklist.
Apparently we need to.
Different parts come from different people, and let's do it. For the PUDs especially.
Yeah.
What we in early times, we called those design standards, but we didn't really get into what they are, and yet we've evolved. Some of those have evolved, like parking for recreational vehicles, and they move on us as we get some insights about that. So we probably can develop a little minimum checklist. But
Generally, our insights are in the form of problems in other areas.
yeah, true.
So again, just for your information, when I go, at this point now, I kind of I'm not going to call it a liberty. I kind of work with the developers on this when their amenities have to go in. I don't let them, I try to make sure they're in there somewhere early enough, but not too early that, or it's just they're not in there at the last minute is what I'm trying to say, because that's always my leverage anyway. But as they're progressing forward, like this area, I'm going to show up, I'm going to look, and I'm going to say, okay, on your PUD, it was approved. Do I have a 1/4 acre, 0.28 acres here, first of all? And I'm going to go and look at, do I have horseshoe pits because that's what was on your exhibit? Do I have barbecue and pavilion areas? And I'm going to look, and it may not be in that square shape, it may be in a rectangle shape. But as long as they have 0.28 acres and they have those amenities there, and they're appropriate, I'm going to pass it off and say that, that's what we expected to see here, and this is it. Now, if I have an issue and it's a little bit like, whoa, this is pushing that envelope, or it's too much of a gray area, I'm going to say, we're going to come back before the city council, make sure they're okay with it in a meeting.
So one of the emails that we received was about lighting for the area. What is the standard? What is the minimum standard that the city has set for requiring lightings on a private street?
I think we have that in one of our plans that's been adopted, and again, I make sure that their plans, when they come in with this is their preliminary plat, they're going to then go into construction drawings. They get vested and vetted here, invested and vetted here, and then they're going to turn in construction drawings, and they're going to meet the standard of the city, whatever it is for those particular designs. So the construction drawings are going to come in, they're going to get shown to the power department. They're going to say, okay, yeah, that meets the standard for lighting on a street. They're all the different departments are going to take a look at that, make sure that it meets the minimum standard on whatever was approved and whatever is under their particular jurisdiction. Power department look and see what the lighting is being presented. Is it sufficient? Is it okay? Does it meet the minimum? Public Works going to look at the street on the design of it, make sure that it meets what was approved and still does what it's supposed to do.
They'll come in and do, review drainage, grade, sewer, water, storm drain, all that'll be part of those documents. And we really won't have review of those. Those will all be done through the Public Works Department.
Right.
They're going to provide me, I'm going to pick this area real quick. There's this landscape strip that was required. They're going to give me a more detailed plant species roughly. Now, I'm not going to go out and measure that this plant has to be 17 inches from, I'm just going to, they presented 27 whatevers and 13 others of this, and I'm going to go and count and make sure that's exactly what's in there.
As far as the garbage, they could be, we haven't made a provision for that, or they could easily have nothing built into the facility so that basically the garbages have to continue to sit out by the street. There's no place to pull them to. There's no place to get them off.
Well, these are single family, and so they'll have their trash and there'll be space between. I know that other project, there was 4 or 5 units that were put together, so they had nowhere to put their trash cans. I think that sometimes it's nice.
Most of the times the HOAs will have those. I know the HOAs I've lived in address the trash issues of where the cans, a lot of times they make them put the cans behind the house so they can't be seen. Depends on the HOA. I know 2 of them I've lived in, that was the stipulation that the trash cans couldn't be seen. You had to put them behind the house or inside the garage to where they couldn't be seen until you took them out to the trash day. And then they had to be off the streets by nightfall on the night of trash day. That's usually an HOA.
That's how my HOA is.
Could we maybe have a representative from the developer maybe touch on some of those points, and maybe we don't need to fret about them?
Are we asking also to review the minutes on this? Is that part of what's being discussed here?
I haven't heard that, but if that's what they
Not necessarily.
Okay, so because I know we're trying to clarify, but I do know in the minutes itself and when this was approved, there were very specific items that you're talking about as part of the motion.
Correct, and that was usually the building.
And so
That would be appropriate if you would like to review it to clarify it, since.
I can send you that right now. So, and because there were specific issues talked about siding, specific issues about driveway. These are all part of the motion. And so I think this is important because this is where it's obvious there was some discussion and it was obvious that these were the items we want to articulate within the motion. And now you're there. And now you just need to decide if this is matching up with the motion. So
I guess the struggle on this one is that because it's been several months ago and we don't have that condensed back to easily go back and look at. You know what I mean? It's nice to say, okay, here's the bullet points of what was approved. So this is what they're working with then.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I know because the official record and the official motion made you identify these things and those are articulated. That's what you should be focusing upon is that.
No, I got that. It's just not part of this application. So I don't have a sheet that says here's what was part of the official record. And I mean, it's not a big deal now because it's easy to go back, but in a year when we're going to get another phase,
then we're gonna be going, oh, wait, what date was it last year that we had to go?
Just
nice that we did the motion.
So we can pull them up and see them.
If we can link it, yeah, you're right. If we can link it, it's great.
Solidifies discussion we've already had.
Roger, are you suggesting a little bit of reader's theater? Is that what you're volunteering for? Or are you sending that to
Well,
us?
I can actually read it. I just sent it to you, but let me just read the actual motion on April 11th. Okay, so this is April 11th. Council member Belliston, I got to make sure I've got the right one. Yeah. Councilman Belliston made a motion to approve an ordinance granting zone change request C-1804 to change the zoning designation from PUD to planned unit development residential, with the findings and conditions of staff and is recommended by the planning commission with the additional conditions. I don't know what a hardy siding is. What is a hardy? Hardy. Okay, thank you. The builders can answer that. A hardy siding to be used, no vinyl. The west side of the project, lots 108, 116, to be single story. There to be no overnight rentals. All units must have 2-car garage with driveways width and depth for 2 cars in the driveway. No more than 30 doors east of Bella Vista until all agreements are signed and approved for 1100 East. There's no overnight rentals in the project. Councilman Turek seconded the motion, passed 3-1. So, and I just sent that to you in your email.
I got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I know there was an attempt to make a motion, but I don't know if it got completely made.
If there's, I was going to say, if there's any more discussion. If there's not, I will make the motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Sunwood at Bella Vista Phase 1, which includes the findings, adding the one that was not on there, added to that those lots 108 through 116, which were also in the minutes of the other motion, are single story.
I'll second.
A motion and a second.
Critic, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Ranger, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
All right, that's approved. Move on to item 8, public hearings. Public hearing for consideration to approve zoning change request Z-18-10 to amend a portion of the Stuckey Farms PCD by making changes to the specific site plan map and updating the zoning comparison chart. Applicant South Landing Development, Carl Larson.
Thank you. Mayor has stated the applicants requesting approval to amend in portions of Stuckey Farms PCD. They are specifically found on the site plan map, which is on the screen and in your packets. Drilling right down to what the specific changes are proposed on these particular areas. Change the use of Village 4 from medium density residential to both medium high density residential and commercial. The new commercial portion will be referred to as Village 26 that you see right there, and then the remainder will be what's left of Village 4 that they want to change to medium high density residential. Also, a portion of Village 5, which is the homesteads. The changes requesting, yep.
Go back just a second. So the portion of 4 is going to be absorbed into 26.
Yeah, 26 is a newly created village.
Okay.
This was all Village 4, that if you take Village 26 and 4, currently they are Village 4.
Okay.
This is the area. So Village 26 is new. It's on the two main, on Washington Fields Road and the Groves Parkway. That's a new village that they want to turn to a commercial portion. And then what's left in Village 4, we want to change the density because that is a request to go to commercial, up the density there, just because it's better to do that next to commercial. Is that, we good there? Okay. Then we're moving on to Village 5, which is currently referred to as the homesteads. It's already, homes are there today, as we know. They're adding in this open space area, this light green area, and that's the portion that they're changing. Again, they're changing densities around to keep everything whole in the whole project. So where they wanted to raise the densities up in that Village 4 to the medium high, they're going to add this open space to reduce the densities in Village 5, make it a little bit more, again, add this open space feature right here for that offset in density. Also change the use of Village number 17, which is over here on the southwest portion of the project. They're going to change that from commercial to very low density residential as well. The commercial use from Village 17 is then transferred to the newly created Village 26 that we just referred to. Again, the applicant wants to make sure that the city council knows that the overall housing unit count remains the same throughout the project. So they're just changing how things are closer together, and that's what we love about PCDs is that we do like clustering in one area, open in others, commercial, the whole gamut there. So also moving on, and the changes change in the form of adding the nightly rental option to Village number 4. Again, this is the piece that's left over next to Village 26. And so they are asking for Village 4 to have the nightly rental option. This is being proposed due to the area being surrounded by the lake on the north and the west, and also having the new commercial village on the east. The applicant feels that nightly rental option will allow for a good transition with the adjoining commercial use. Also being proposed is a change to the southern portion of Village 1. Village 1 right now houses the development referred to as the Meadows, the Stuckey Farm. The area they want to change is this particular one with all the smaller boxes. If you've been out to Stuckey Farms in the Meadows, these were the original cottages that were brought in to see how they would do. Now that they're all completed, they're trying to take them out of Village 1 and the HOA that has this area that's tied to the Meadows because the uses are so different from the single family detached. We'll take these particular portions and now put them down to the approved area known as the cottages that the city council's seen and approved some preliminary plats on that, and those will be moving forward as well. So that is what they'd like to do in Village 1 is to take those 11 units out of Village 1, put them into Village 12. Now, with that said, that means that, just so you are aware, that Village 12 right now does have the overnight vacation rental use on it as part of the PCD.
The whole Village 12?
All of Village 12 does, and actually Village 13. That got approved a couple years back. So they want to add, again, that particular portion right there into Village 12 and have it be incorporated again with the nightly rentals as well.
So that adjustment would then, those homes would become nightly rental eligible.
Correct. And so where it's green, it would become beige. But again, they're right next to, those particular homes. Now, I will point out that as you see this design right here, and I'm just going to go over to this TV just so I can explain what some of those dotted lines are. These are the driveways and the extra parking, and these are garages that are associated with the cottages. So the cottages themselves are here that would be as close as they are to those lots. Does that make sense?
Those are already owned, right?
Those are already, now I don't know if anybody owns them. Some are sold. I'm not sure the number of them that are sold. But I just wanted to, so you knew that, the top part of those dotted lines up there, again, is driveways, garages, because they do come with open parking extra, and then they each have a garage that's associated with each cottage. And so the northern part of that is those areas. Just make sure it's clear.
Because we've, in the past, when the people have owned in an area, they've been very reluctant to change the zoning in the area where people have already purchased.
The particular owners of these cottages, you're saying probably.
Either the ones or the next, or the ones.
I'll let the applicant, I don't know if they're, I know they're all built. Now, I don't know if they're all privately owned as of yet, but so I'm not going to.
Well, even if it's
speak.
just one owner, right? Unless you get that one owner saying, hey, I'm way cool with it, then, I'm reluctant to change the zoning on.
Correct.
Where they live.
It was like we had in Sienna Hills when that group, we had a third of them built, and they said, whoa, we don't want that in our particular area. So, okay, so those 11 units, want to be proposed to move down to Village 12. The last change is the change on the zoning comparison chart. Oh, it's on that same thing. I just need to.
Do you easily, do you readily have a copy of what's the current overall layout? Because this is the proposed layout, but do you have a copy of the current that could be dropped in? At least maybe not tonight, but over the next 2 weeks because it's public hearing.
Yeah, we'll drop you in what the current is.
I'd like to cross-reference and see what the differences are.
Yeah. This one wasn't, I didn't think, it was, you know, some of them get really drastic. I'm moving things from here down to here. And so this one I wasn't as concerned, but I can see where, you know, that would be helpful to you to see what it is. You know, Village 4, again, just is being split into two. Village 5 didn't change greatly. They're just, again, moving the densities. But yeah, we can give you the current.
Is there any other place besides what you just talked about where we've approved short-term?
In this project, in the
Stuckey
PCD?
Farm? Yeah.
Right now, I know that Village 12 and 13 are definitely overnight rental villages, these two in the beige. You can see they've kind of laid out the cottage area. Now, Village 13, I'll let the developer come up and tell you his plan on 13. Personally, I just can't remember what it was. It's been too long since I've talked about Village 13, a couple of years. So you can see the cottages in number 12, but right now it's 12 and 13 have the vacation rental. So
That, we've given them vacation rental without a preliminary plat. No plat for 13.
no, in the PCD, we just gave the area. We did that in Coral Canyon because they have the things they have to follow in their PCDs, that we kind of leave that and we let them bring that in, and then we discuss how those get designed out. Because they're tied in densities, they're tied in all kinds of other requirements as part of their PCD. So with that, let me move on. I'm 2/3 or 80%, I think, at least through the report. Staff feels confident in the above proposals, with just a little concern as it relates to that proposed 11 cottage units coming out of Village 1 into 12. Way back when these came in, I had this little gnawing thing that said, I'm just wondering that in the future, are these going to get changed over? And, you know, I didn't worry too much about it, but here we are. It is being proposed to go that way. Again, I guess my concern is these homes that are right next to it, you know, now have those to it. That's just, and then you have the folks that live in Warner Gateway, which is that other area right here that I'm kind of blowing up that isn't part of the PCD, you know, but they knew, did not know, but they could have known that Village 12, before Warner Gateway even came about, Village 12 was a vacation rental village from the get-go. So they'd be adding 11 more units to that. But with that, that's probably staff's only concern. I really don't have as much concern over here on Village 4 with the proposal, knowing that the lakes are there. Village 26 is going to be a commercial development. I'm not as concerned about that one. It's not a bad area, actually, for vacation rental, right there with all those amenities, with the lakes, et cetera, around it. So the Planning Commission reviewed the request at their June 6th meeting, held a public hearing. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-18-10 for the zone change request, amending portions of the Stuckey Farms PCD project plan onto you, the City Council, and that's again based on the findings, subject to the conditions in the report. The conditions are basically just everything that's in the report will be the only changes that will take place in this amendment. So with that, if you have any more questions, I'll be glad to try to get through those for you and with you.
Any additional questions for Drew or for the developer?
Just a minute to talk about if the residents of the Meadows are in agreement with the change, staff will be fine with it. Are the residents of the Meadows in agreement?
I don't think we had, if I had a resident of the Meadows come in on the public hearing, I had quite a few folks from Warner Gateway at the public hearing. I think we had one individual, and to my recollection, she wasn't really, again, she was just worried about traffic like most people are. So if they go vacation rental, her concern was wondering about the traffic. We try to say once it's built out, I would imagine that most of these people are probably going to come in from the south and go in there. We had an individual that wanted to put a nice big speed bump. Mike gave the thumbs up on that in their area. Just joking, Mike. but we told them we don't do speed bumps in Washington City. Someone made a recommendation of putting a gate there, and I said, well, it's a public street. I technically can't do that either. But that's kind of the comments that came out. If there were anything kind of negative, I think the folks in the Meadows would be happy to get rid of the cottages out of their HOA. That's why this is being proposed. It's been kind of a rub with the different uses. You know, the folks that are living in the detached single-family homes throughout Village 1, the 11 units that are part of their HOA that they have to take care of, as well as with the common area and open space. And people paying, you know, the dues kind of get a little, I think they've had problems with that and what's fair to charge, et cetera. So I can see why they want to get out of their HOA. If I was, I'd probably want to too if I lived there. And I was in this, if I was in either one of them, I'd probably see why they'd want to get out of each other's tied HOA CCR things.
The homestead that they came in, just wanted to know what they were going to look like, just what they were looking like, that they were in. You know,
Yeah, like I say, we had, because again, the homestead's changing a bit with this new, now they're going to have to come in and amend their plats if this gets approved by you, because they're already preliminary plat approved in this particular area, and they know they'd have to come in and amend their preliminary plats in the homestead to put in this change of this open space.
Thank you, Drew. Any other questions for Drew? For the developer? All right, it's a public hearing. Any of you out there that expressed a desire or not? Seeing nobody, I'll give you 5 seconds. I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion to close. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second.
Turk, aye.
Bellis and I.
Ranger, aye.
Ward, aye.
Thank you. Move on to item B, public hearing for consideration to open and amend the Washington City 2017-2018 fiscal year budget for the funds of Washington City.
Mayor and Council, this is to finish off our fiscal year. It ends on Saturday, and then we'll start our new budget cycle. A couple weeks ago, we held a budget workshop with you and went over some of the modifications that we're expecting in this closeout. With the amendment, we're actually doing an overall reduction of the city's budget by around $600,000. This, the bulk of it is related to, as we discussed, capital projects that wouldn't be closed out in time for this budget and will carry over to future years. So the amended budget as proposed for the city is $57,220,091. If you have any additional questions on any of that material, I'd be happy to address that.
Any questions for Kimberly or city manager or the mayor?
Give the mayor credit for the reduction of $600,000.
I'll take it all. Again, it's a public hearing, folks. Anybody out there interested in our budget or in your budget? Okay. Thank you.
I'm Nathan Baker, Treasure Valley. I know that we should have a bigger part to play in this experience. And we probably ought to do something about it, and I don't know what. But anyway, thank you for all that you do. It is appreciated. I know that others may even be to the contrary of that, but we really can't complain if we don't take part. But thank you. Appreciate
Nathan,
it.
thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Mr. Baker, I would mention too that we do have a great forum on WashingtonCity.org that is very user-friendly with respect to the budget, because we also know that we don't want them to be overcomplicated either. But we would encourage you. It's really a nice forum, and if you get the chance, just go to WashingtonCity.org and to the finance and you'll see our dashboard. And that's all the time. So you can even drill down to the transaction levels and look at them if you want. So nice way to just kind of get more engaged without getting out of your slippers even. So
It's my pajamas.
in the pajamas, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. All right, if nothing else, I entertain a motion to close that public hearing. Motion to close, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, I have a motion and a second.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 9, ordinances, a consideration to approve a resolution amending and closing the Washington City 2017-2018 fiscal year budget.
I move a resolution amending and closing the Washington City 2017-18 fiscal year budget.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
Thank you. That is approved. We move on to item B, consideration to approve an ordinance adopting General Plan Amendment G-18-03 by changing the land use designation from low density to medium density and medium high density, located approximately 400 East and 4200 South. Applicant Development Solutions Group, Inc.
There was a little bit of a snafu, but I'm going to go back to our meeting 2 weeks ago and bring you up that exhibit real quick. Bear with me.
Yeah, we don't have the exhibit.
I know, I thought I saw it in there, but it won't be that hard to find.
While you're doing that, remind me again why it was recommended denial at 3-2. Well, it was mostly traffic
Yeah, the motion I put in there is the,
based on the possible traffic going through Treasure Valley, right?
correct.
Okay.
And we kind of talked about that. That's the catch-22. We can't take care of the traffic that's happening everywhere else until we build roads. We can't build roads till we have development. And so it's one of those rock and a hard place. No, that's not the one I want. Regular meeting, 613. This is the one we're looking at. So again, they're mirroring everything on north of them, that they're just trying to get this change from low density to these three. The proposal over here is really not theirs. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that's owned by the Hancock Gibby clan, that existing community commercial general plan designation. We're basically talking about these two right here, the medium density, the medium high density.
Red to the south, but the red to the north is owned by Hoops.
Hoops. Yeah, the Hoops own the piece to the north. They own everything actually up to the north. That's, their vacation rental, Freedom Village is in the medium density. The medium high density is, they're going to bring in to you, I can't remember. It's going to be a assisted living project that's been approved. And then they'll have the commercial be the last thing that they do. We're looking at these two particular items here. And again, just to refresh memory, the Planning Commission did recommend by a vote of 3-2 denial because of possible traffic going through Treasure Valley, is how it was stated, to amend on this particular general plan. So, but again, this is that hard one that I've always stuck with, that we have master planned roads that go through this area. And so we got to somehow get those roads in, and the city doesn't go out and build roads, out in the middle of nowhere. Wish we could, but we just don't have the resources to do
Drew,
so.
One of the thoughts that I've had as I've walked and driven down through there is if we move forward and change this general plan, that part of the preliminary plat would be that those roads, that they work with that Hoops development and make sure those roads come through as part of their preliminary plat. Say, okay, we've worked with the other development, we can push the roads through, and then we alleviate the traffic concerns that are.
Correct. And then to help you got Treasure Valley Drive. I mean, I think it's Treasure Valley Drive or Avenue right here in this yellow area that's half built as part of Steeplechase.
Correct.
And then when you get to this pink area, that's kind of where, well, actually,
That's partway built too, right?
yes.
But it turns to private streets right there.
That's the
Yeah.
Where it peels off, it's private space, yeah.
Yeah. So these particular two areas right here in the pink is where the Hoops have their two developments will be taking place. And it's about right in the middle where that existing word is. It's about where the road is half built out.
And oftentimes these developers will work together in those things that they know what the challenge is. They know kind of what this council is expecting. Oftentimes those developers will be together in that. And I guess that was why my thought process was kind of where it was at.
I did get word that they have talked to the Hoops about a big concern with the folks was, even though we're not at that stage yet, was about, traffic for construction traffic. The applicant called and let me know that, hey, they've talked with Mr. and Mrs. Hoops, and would be glad to help let them come upon that road that they used as part of their construction traffic coming off of Washington Fields Road, that
Well, they're
area.
here, maybe they can address that. while they're
Okay.
here, so.
With that, again, we're in the 2-week holding period is completed. It's ready for council action if you're ready to do so, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have had over the last 2 weeks.
Will you take us there on the map
Google?
so we can see those road alignments?
You want the proposed ones or the master planned ones? Let me see if I've got that in transportation master plan. These are the areas. Currently, the orange is Treasure Valley Road. And again, that's proposed to come up and then have a bend right through that commercial piece that the Hoops own. The blue line is actually 4200 South, and it's kind of designed right now. We don't really like it, but it's going to come and bend down and then hit into the pink particular master plan road, which that particular one at the south end of this proposal that you're seeing, you're why their property has that funny bend in it. That's that. So this pink road, which is, can't remember which road coming out of St. George that is, but
It's 2450 that extends across to the high school.
right. And so 2450 is, I think, that green road right there, St. George. So we're thinking about having then it head north and then follow that property line out and then go by. It looks like it's cutting right on the south end of the nursery out there. So I don't think the Hancocks and Gibbies are too happy about that particular proposal, but that is the master transportation right there. And that yellow one is Washington Field Road. That help you? Oh, Mike's got some.
We actually do have an amendment coming up for this area that will actually change this. We've worked with the property owners, come up with an idea that would work a little bit better on this. Yeah. Show me how to do this again.
Let me see if yours is like mine. I have to drag. Here. There we go. Now let's go to Council TV. And then that's you. And then you can pull it down where you need.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see the little bubbled area right there. So we're kind of realigning the 4200 South will come directly up, come up and tie into the Fields Road.
This is the proposed amendment?
Okay, is the field the yellow, the chartreuse? Yeah.
So used to be the road would come up here like this. Now 4200 will come directly up, tie to the Fields Road. Road coming up from
It's Treasure Valley Road.
Treasure Valley Road will come up and tie into it at that point. And then this road out here that is, this is in St. George City, but this will come up and probably move it out over in this direction and tie it in through here. This will actually, this is called that as an 85-foot. St. George City has a 90-foot shown on their master plan. Talking with St. George, they're going to reduce that down to either a 66 or a 60-foot. So in turn, we don't need that big of a road out there. So we'll drop ours down to around a 60 or 66 foot. But like I said, we've worked with the property owners here. We'll get a revision done on this and hopefully bring that to the council here in July. And it'll just be an amendment to our master plan.
It's a lot more clean road, you know.
The layout's a lot better, works a lot better for the movement of the traffic.
especially for 4200 south, so you don't have to, come off it, dive south, then catch up. And
So we end up with a better alignment. Do we end up with a resolution to the problem that we're having in Treasure Valley and some of that traffic movement where we can't get to the road we want to get to?
So this will all be built with the development other than the portion up towards the Washington Fields Road because they're coming into a different property owner. But I believe that's probably something that they can work out with the property owner. But again, this will come at preliminary plat time, not at a general plan amendment. So we've met with the property owners, they're agreeable to it, but until we get actually into the preliminary plat and actually looking at some layouts, it's all very conceptual right now.
So if we, at the preliminary plat level, are insisting that there be a connection, we can still disapprove it.
Yes. And that would be the time that the council would take action on any of the roadways.
Mike, is the ultimate goal of the traffic flow is to move that traffic to Washington Fields Road?
Get them to Washington Fields
So
Road.
basically, we want to move it east and hit the Fields Road and out rather than moving it up through Treasure Valley and up into that 36, 56.
Correct. And with our, because we actually put it into the models and the traffic models, they really identified that this is the way the traffic's going to want to go is to Washington Fields Road.
So, I mean, I know the preliminary plan's not finished, so the 4200 south, would that be taken care of underneath the developer that's working in that area right now in this particular
with
phase?
This general plan amendment. Part of that, there's just a very top piece connecting to the Fields Road, I think still needs to be resolved.
Oh, that's right.
But I think it's very easy to do. Just the conversations I've had with the different property owners, I don't think it's going to be an issue. But like I say, that's when we'll address it as a preliminary plat.
I think it's roughly 100, 200.
Yeah.
No. Most of the residents that I've spoke with voiced a huge concern is they'd be okay with working with the growth and the density as long as that way for traffic would connect into the Fields Road. So seeing that being discussed at this point, I'm very glad we're talking about this as early as we are into this, because I know we need more development before this is usually finished. So
The thing for me is it's a general plan. I mean, to talk about traffic in a general plan,
it's difficult.
It's a little early because we haven't really designed out the specifics because they don't know what the general plan is going to allow them to do.
I agree. And that was what I'm saying with this also is I know it's a little bit advanced and still guessing a little bit, but it's good to see that realignment looks a lot better than we had previously. So
it's an issue.
So, but Mike, the pink road there comes in closer then to the nursery? Is that, or is it actually where it moves up is
It
before
would
the
probably
nursery?
come in closer to the nursery, but that's the Gibby property. They were very concerned about this alignment next to that hillside there. So, and they were concerned about the width of the road. And
So they like this better?
well, yes, but we're redoing this one. So we're actually taking that pink colored and we're shifting it away from the hills.
They like the proposed better. That's, I think,
So
this
is the first, we got another member working on now with this road to come out.
Above, so on the other side of the nursery, or what am I looking at there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be, it's just to get it away from the toe of this slope. They did not like the road against the toe of the slope, the property owners, and they'd like it moved out a little bit. And they did not like the 85-foot road, which.
that's the same property.
Yeah, it's the same property owner. This is what they would like.
This
to
is the
see.
same property owner all the way through up
All the way
to
to the greenhouses, yes. It's the Gibby.
to the greenhouses, and then it's,
Well, all the way to Washington Fields Road there.
oh, it is, that owns the nursery and everything right there.
Yes.
So then, and then what am I looking at with the slightly curved yellow or orangey lines there? What am I?
Whenever there's a change, they cloud it.
Well,
To show that that's going to be
Yeah.
changed.
These roads, yes.
Yeah,
That's just
that's to designate the change area.
Yeah, that's just to show where we're at.
We're playing with a new road alignment. We thought that might be fun to see if we can do that. That'd be kind of fun.
You get a lot of motorcycles on it.
Well,
The motorcycle, there you go, right?
I mean, my daughter would approve this more use of color,
Yeah. That's why we're trying to decide if that was magenta or pink.
The Gibby family, I believe, owns from this point over.
Not that far up, Mike. They
because that's the run, yeah, it's actually.
Right
here. Somewhere back here, that, because it used to come up.
The Magenta, do we have those roads in place already? Any part of them?
Nothing out there.
There's nothing.
4200 South and Treasure Valley is the only one we have.
Okay,
42 stops right here.
all right.
Treasure Valley stops roughly somewhere here.
Okay.
Treasure Valley is only a half of it right now.
Treasure Valley and Steeplechase right there converge.
So see, we can change road alignment.
We can. And that's what I have to explain to people is on our master plans, if it's not an existing, it's an idea we need to get from point A to point B. Except for one road.
Can we go back? Except for, what did he say?
Except for one road.
That's prior to us getting the right of way. Once the right of way's in, it's done.
You know, there's actually room to change that road. In some of these, there's no room to change it. No, nobody knows.
Can you go back to the aerial and just show us the zoning out there? Probably the general plan.
You take over.
This is what's current right now, and I just wanted to point out, the reason that pink row there at the beginning, this was all back when we were going to be having high school out there, so the school district was really adamant that these roads had to be this way, and so now they changed them. So if you want the aerial, there's your aerial, this is what you want.
Well, I wanted it, yeah, with the general plan.
The current. So the orange area up here is Steeplechase. This is the hoops they own, this medium high density and this commercial pieces. Hoops. This is the Hancock Gibby piece out here that's already designated community commercial. And right here's the piece we're talking about that's in low density that they want to change to medium density, matching this, and medium high density. Here's your current general plan right now.
What were the drainage issues we had some email about that. Can you elaborate?
Like this is
Treasure Valley was a very, very, very poor design when it was initially constructed. They constructed Treasure Valley with underground detention in the roads. In concept, it works really well, other than the groundwater is only about 2 feet down. So our underground detention didn't detain.
It's always full.
So 3 years ago, we laid a new drainage system up in, tied into the Treasure Valley system, so we actually had drainage in it. We upsized that large enough that we could take care of the drainage all the way up into the Steeplechase development and the developments right in that general area, as well as some of Stookie Farms. With the schools coming in and their drainage, they actually had to lay a new line in, and we actually paid and upsized that line. That line comes in now, and it comes up 4,200 and just dead ends there, and it's large enough that we will take it on up. We can still go up, catch all the Stookie Farms. And so our drainage is really well taken care of now. The drainage issues we've had in the past is when we had, probably 5 years back, we had a cloudburst that hit right in that general area, and it was a runoff of the Anders's property that came down and came up against the Stonehenge development.
Sheet flooding.
Yeah, sheet flooding off that. You know, we had, I think it was an inch in 20 minutes of rain, so our drainage system doesn't handle that kind of water. We rely on our roads to handle those kind of events. And detention to detain water. So as development actually happens, it actually really helps us on runoff because we build in detention in these units and detain the water so we don't have the flooding.
So when we get these emails, and there was one that addressed a lot of drainage issues that they've had. Do you get a copy of that?
I don't.
It seemed relevant.
Yeah, I would like to see if there's somebody that's got an issue that we need to address.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's a current issue, but there's certainly a number of issues that they're worried about that if we don't address it better in this new piece, that those same things will continue. So.
Yeah, and like I say, as these develop, it actually improves our drainage because they're detaining those flows, and we get a big event. They have their basins that will detain them and then slow release them to where our piping can handle the flows. And the Treasure Valley Park is actually a detention basin. So that's one of the big detention basins for the area that park will fill up with water and then actually slowly release out as the piping can handle the flows.
When we get emails that are so specific to a department, is it appropriate for us to forward those to?
If you ever have questions,
Mike?
feel free to call.
Yeah, I'd much appreciate that.
Treasure Valley Park, if it was designed as a detention basin, it's only designed to carry Treasure Valley Park.
No.
It's not, it's designed to
It can,
carry
yep, other areas as well.
other areas.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't look like it's that deep.
Yeah, it's not terribly deep, but it's designed to be able to handle the detention we need. And we have that basin that we know where it is. I can't tell you exactly where it is right now, but it's not a large area. The school has their own detention basin in their parking lots. So they detain all of their water there, but I think maybe part of Steeplechase is included in that.
But is this property that we're discussing included in that?
I don't believe it is. I think they'll have to take care
So
of their
they'll
own
have to
drainage.
take care of their own detention?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
But that's ideally what, as far as Public Works would like to say, I would really like us to utilize larger basin areas and have regional basin areas and use them as park facilities and have a dual use of them. You know, down in the Phoenix area, they widely use those, and it's very impressive how they deal with their storm.
They've done that down Little Valley a bit too. Down, if you go down 3000 South, down towards that south end, they have a big regional detention basin
Right.
where everything comes into. I know where there's concerns with some of the drainage here. I want to make sure that they're going to be taking care of some of their own.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things we look at when we get into the construction phase. Is when they submit their construction drawings, that's one of the things that we really focus in on is drainage.
I've just forwarded that email to you. If maybe before we meet again, if there are other issues that have been raised that we haven't just addressed, would you address them then?
I'd be glad to. Yes.
Thank you, Michael. For
Anything else?
Well, there were some fairly specific points here that I'm not sure that the council has history on. Could we maybe have Charlotte Ride come up and help us with those?
Just looking at new stuff.
Oh, what would you like to know? Charlotte Ride, Treasure Valley. Ride, W-R-I-D-E.
Wait a minute.
Because we haven't got this publicized.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some questions.
So I'm not asking for a public hearing. I'm just asking for some clarification on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll look to the chair. Make that decision. I mean, we have Jeff just waiting.
Well, it's always council's discretion to invite them, but whether or not this is a public hearing, is nothing different than discretion to hear other comments from attendees.
I don't have a problem with it, as long as it's not anything
Probably,
different. that
I
you're-
think what you're asking, Council Ward, is for some clarification on some
Right.
parts of the email. So maybe if you would ask her what those particular questions that you want clarification.
Doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like we're clear on exactly what events as far as the drainage issues that you referred to in your email there. And If you can maybe just direct us to that, and maybe we can have staff comment on if we feel like we've got that covered.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me for recollection, so I'll try to remember what I put in there. So when Steeplechase was still excavated, no properties were on, no housing, no structure, and it was still dirt. And we had a drainage system that was plugged. One of the homes in Stonehenge during a rainstorm got flooded with muddy water. That was one thing. And that was in my email. So does that make sense?
Okay, when was that? Can you give
I can't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah,
It was right when
Mr.
Stone.
Shaw said about 5 years ago, we were talking to the same event. Yeah.
Yeah, that was right when. Yeah, it got plugged up. And so the homeowner didn't receive any compensation or help from the city or the developer of Steeplechase. They made everything themselves. They had a lot of people helping, but, and they didn't complain too much. It was everybody else that was complaining. But it didn't seem right.
Do they have a basement?
No, it was all their downstairs, totally mess.
Off the back wall.
From their
down there. I was there, as part of that cleanup crew.
So you saw that?
Yep.
Yeah. So am I saying it correctly? What happened?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
No, you hit it dead X.
Okay. And then when Treasure Valley Road extended to the east, then it raised the ground level from the undeveloped land to the south, which is what they're trying to propose now. And so when it rained, the water coming down the slope from the red came into Treasure Valley, their east side or their east park, bringing muddy water because it would hit Treasure Valley Road, which was now elevated. And so the nature or natural slope was disturbed. So that brought muddy water into Treasure Valley East Park and down through Treasure Valley Road and some of the other areas of Treasure Valley. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And I talked to Lester and some of those guys over at Public Works, and they did have the developer rough up the dirt just slightly in a little bit of area and didn't really do much. So anyway, those are the two main things I think I put in there. And originally, like you said, the developer who designed Treasure Valley did some things that were really great. And our alleyways still have major problems.
So I think the thing for me in this discussion that we're having right now, and even the discussion of traffic is it something that should hold up the general plan, or is it something that needs to be discussed when we get to the preliminary plat stage, which is where we actually have designs and plans that are put together where they're supposed to be addressing those issues? I don't dispute that those issues exist or need to be addressed or looked at. I just comes at a later date than what we're looking at
Well,
today.
one of the things too, especially the flooding portion of this that I've been involved with over the years down there, development, as Mr. Shaw has alluded to, development is going to cure those problems, because what's happened is you've had all that flat barren ground that over years has become clay compacted. And so when those rains come, there is no, it just runs. And so, and the natural flow of the ground is towards these homes. And so it just sheets across and drops into these homes. And so development really is going to help those things out.
Right.
By collecting it and putting it into pipes and keeping it from doing what's happening today.
My point was in my letter in that regard, Jeff, was we did get development of Steeplechase, but yet it made another problem.
Well, it pushed it south, but it's the same
South
problem.
and west.
Exactly.
And
So what it is, it cured this little piece here, but the problem still exists down here.
So that's why I said I didn't kind of trust everything was told to me, because then we ended up with muddy water.
Well, that's why what you heard him do is rough up the grounds and say, okay, if we pull this up, we've got this compaction that's happened over years. Maybe if we get it up, we can get some of that to leach itself in and not run in sheet.
Yeah, it didn't do much. Yeah. So, okay. Any other questions for me?
No, appreciate it.
And you didn't have anything in your letter that was really about the zone change. It was mostly traffic and drainage, correct?
I did say that it's a problem already, so why make it worse with traffic?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I knew there'd be other people, so I didn't want to for you. So
We
thank you very
appreciate,
much.
we appreciate the emails. It really
Oh,
does.
thank
Like I
you.
said, a lot of it, some of it, we kind of know the problems. We know that they exist, but some of them are new problems to us. And so we.
Well, even if
it gives
you
us
know
cause
them
for
though, yeah,
pause.
it's helpful to refresh that, especially if you send it early enough, we can read it before the meeting. I think I got a few of them tonight that I didn't get read before the meeting. Came in pretty late.
And I do appreciate everything you do. It's a lot of work and sometimes thankless, but I appreciate every one of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike, you feel like we've got all those issues addressed that, I mean, you're certainly, I know your memory, you're aware of these issues and.
Yes, and like I say, a lot of it's going to come with the development. As the development happens, it just keeps improving our system on the way up. There's not a lot I can do on a vacant piece of ground to protect it from any of the flood events that we get, because, you know, our rain events, when we hit our monsoon season, it's a hit and miss. And there was 2 years in a row we got hit up at top of Main area and flooded, and it was actually the years before that we flooded out through here. So our events are very fast events, a lot of rain in a very short amount of time, which creates a lot of runoff for us. But our drainage system, in the last 10 years, we have made huge advances in our drainage system. And we're looking really good on our drainage system as we move out with it. The Steeplechase actually built that drainage that went through Treasure Valley. That's how they had to drain their system, and we paid the upsize into that pipe through the Treasure Valley development to actually handle the issues we had at Treasure Valley.
My concerns are somewhat outside of the box in a sense, and I appreciate everything that's been put forward on this. On the connectivity, this isn't quite fair because it doesn't address this particular development, but the neighboring development next door with the school is my huge concern, how these roads connect and the speeding and stuff. I saw that one of the things we don't do in Washington City, for example, are speed bumps. And I know this might be a little bit outside of the thing. Is there any particular reason why we don't do speed bumps in Washington City?
Really a liability is one issue. The other thing is they don't do what people think. They don't slow traffic down. They actually speed it up.
Really?
It's jackrabbiting is what I call it. People slow down, go over that hump, and then give it the engine to get going again.
So it does nothing to
Yeah, really the
validate
most
that.
effective is not speed bumps. If you get any effectiveness, and they're very expensive, is speed humps. And those are the very wide ones that you come up and you maybe go you go a little bit further and then you come back off. But you will find an average speed increase because of the jackrabbiting with the, and over a short period of time, they'll usually just hit them and not even slow down.
Wow.
Good on cars.
Just driving around that whole area I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions about how that's going to be safe. You know?
And the industry standard is even if you get an entity that will put them in, they'll only put them in on residential roads.
I do like what's been proposed on the 4200 South. That looks a whole lot better to better tie into that school system. So that looks really good. I appreciate that.
Any other discussion? Now I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. I just want to say that while I don't dispute some of the issues that have been brought up, I just think that they're more effectively argued at a later date when we do have the plan. So I'll make a motion that we approve an ordinance adopting general plan amendment G-18-03 by changing the land use designation from low density to medium density and medium high density located at approximately 400 east and 4200 south.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second.
By way of comment on the motion, I mean, what was our initial plan, the intention of the low density? Because we're not talking about open space here. We're not talking about farmland here. We're talking about something that was actually put into the general plan as low density here. That'd be my first comment. My second would be that I agree with Councilman Belliston to a point, but if you're going to change that density, then you also should not push that forward unless you agree that you're going to be able to deal with the issues that you're creating with larger density. That's fine to say you're going to deal with it at a later time, as long as you believe you have the
Yeah,
resources.
I would agree with exactly what you say, and part of what we've seen tonight, I think, does that. Our road situation we've talked about. The biggest concern I've heard out of this is the traffic. And what I've seen tonight, futuristically, the plan's in place to take care of that.
So back to the original plan with the general plan, where
You understand a general plan is just, typically isn't the landowner making the.
I understand the general
application.
plan is that, but I also understand that nobody asked for lower density. Is, just keeping track of where our city's going.
I don't see anything that can't be dealt with through the design of the project and.
On that part, but as far as the general plan, what was the intention, or what were we looking at when we placed the low density out there?
Heck, if I know, it was done prior to this council. I wasn't involved with that discussion. I mean, the general plan's been in place for probably 15 years, because I don't think we changed it in this last general plan amendment.
That portion didn't.
Yeah, at least this area has not been, this has been in since I've been working with the city, and even prior to that, I think this particular area. Now, a lot of things have changed over time, and that's why general plans get amended. Washington Fields Road may have not been planned to be the big road that it's going to be, and with the airport came in after this was given the low density. You can see all these factors that have now changed. Stuckey Farms was not a big, how many 600 and some odd acre master planned area when this was given the low density designation. I'm just trying to give you a few triggers of, now that we have a Stuckey Farms, we have an airport, those things, then things will tend to change over time. Now, we don't go just willy-nilly go and say, well, now that all this is in, let's just start doing this. We kind of wait for development, property owners, et cetera, to bring those proposals to us. Do they fit? It's just like when the Hancocks and the Gibbies brought us that commercial piece right there. That was low density right next to.
And I'm aware of all that, and I appreciate. Not that I don't.
That's just the history. I'm just trying to help.
I do appreciate the rehearsal of that and the thinking of some of those aspects that do trigger that change. But we also, as a city council, the general plan is one of our major tools for guiding the development of the city in the way that we want to go. And I think it behooves us to make sure that when we do this, it's not because of triggers or just convenience. It's something that we agree will help guide our city into a place we want to end up. Changes, triggers, and things that, we need to take those into account. We certainly need to, because the city is going to change. We can't be fixed. That's why we have the ability to change it. But
I would say that the interesting part about general plans is initially when general plans are developed, and again, they change all the time. But I would say city has a huge influence on the plan originally, and the citizens are the ones who begin to move the general plan around as it begins to grow. Because again, we could have put these colors down way back when there wasn't a lot of interest out there, and everybody said that seems fine. But then, for instance, you get a commercial and it comes through and this is all good. I mean, we don't believe that general plans ever ought to be chipped into a stone, or really, quite frankly, not a lot would happen. So we think these are good processes. Again, you have to balance as an elected body, what these are, but we could have had some modifications with regards to the commercial. Well, that's going to have some ripple effect, medium height, get a little bit more dense when you butt up to commercial. You don't get the state lots that want to butt up to commercial. So it will ripple, but what's so kind of fantastic about a general plan and how it works is this is the exact role in which the public plays as large a portion as they do in the general plan. And that's why we have the public hearings. So we get people who are not exactly in the general plan to come in and say, here's how I feel about it. Council still, at the end of the day, has to be the one to kind of balance this out. But I think initially when we put general plans together, they almost become like sometimes even concentric rings. And say, okay, we'll start here, and then as the citizens start to get involved, they'll start to make this patchwork, this tapestry that we have.
You said citizens twice, and for me, I would probably use the term landowner more than that. And the landowner does have rights to pursue the development of their property. And so you have to defer to what the landowner wants unless you can see that there's a negative impact to the area. And I just can't, at this point, for me, see a negative impact outside of the traffic concerns, which are going to be addressed through the construction and design of it.
Well, I take issue with the landowner only because in the end of the day, it's the city, it's the citizens and the people who live here who have to live with what happens there. And we always talk about landowners and their rights, but it is the reason we have the powers given to us is so that we can guide a city that is still livable and people actually want to live here after the landowners are done with what they have.
That's why we have a public hearing.
Right.
Because that's where the citizens come in and say, you know, at least let us share our opinions on how we feel about this. There's always somebody that goes upstream. And sometimes we don't like that, but every one of us probably had some interaction one way or another. But this clearly is reflective of what has been a large stake, if you look at the city as a whole, not this decent city. But as you look at the city as a whole, this is a general plan that actually is much more inclusive of the community, both landowners, citizens, and ever, than probably the original plan we tossed out there. Had all these many little public hearings all over in which that's been taken into consideration and a decision has been made one way or another by the city council.
And if I may just add, zoning practices, and Roger used a good word, it's stepping or rippling. You always have your higher intense uses, industrial and commercial, and then you want to slowly step out of that. It's hard to ask someone to put a 15 or a 20,000 square foot lot next to a commercial development. I mean, you can ask them to do it, but frankly, it's not fair and it's not right. So it doesn't do the city any good. So we like to see this commercial to high density to medium density and then you get into your lower densities, and there should be those stepping stones that kind of blend it together.
I have a clarifying question on that, because Ryan Thomas, who represented Development Solutions, in his comments to us said that he proposed a medium high density, and our medium high density goes from 7 to 12. And he said, look, I was shooting for 7 to 8 units. So if a contractor says, look, we're going for 7, 8 units in this area, even though it's the low end of medium density, and if he has that in the written part of what's being proposed, if he comes back later and puts in 12, does that matter? Or he's got?
Well, it may matter to you because you might have felt like you were misled, but by law, our density says 7 to 12.
So no matter what
let's
he
just say
says
that,
in it, because that's one of my concerns
your
with
preliminary
this.
plat, absolutely, preliminary plat.
You can come back and say, you know what?
Hold it and
Yeah.
say, look, you said 7, we're going to hold you to 7.
Because that's the part right here where I get a little concerned on these, where we're right on the fringe of one density to the other. I understand the feathering.
Yeah.
But he says, hey, I am going to do only 7 to 8. And the people that come back to live in that area say, well, that's a great concession. That he's not maximizing it. And then it gets all built and there's 12.
Or he could sell it the next day and the zoning.
It's not just preliminary plat. He still doesn't have the zoning. This is general plan.
Okay.
The zoning's not in place yet.
And that's preliminary plat. When that comes back,
Well, zoning vests you,
then preliminary
zoning
plat.
vests you, and then preliminary plat behind that.
Okay, so we're still once again back to your argument of these are great
Correct. These
things.
are very
We got those
preliminary.
things we've got to get to before we can address.
Yeah,
those
there is
issues.
a lot of stop signs still to come to where you can say, hey, that's nope.
And I think that's reassuring to know for the people who are invested in this that live close, is like, we're very much invested in the details. Our public works is advised. We're advised of those things, but we can only address them as the development occurs. So
Right.
that's kind of the thing that we have to be aware of in this process. Right now, there's just jackrabbits and weeds out
Can I
there,
just say
so-
one more thing? I mean, I think there's a pretty good track record in the city that there's not this just wholesale slippery slope fallacy. We had an ad hominem fallacy teaching to us a month or two ago, and one of the other fallacies is a slippery slope fallacy, which means that if I approve this, if I go to A, I'm absolutely going to arrive at Z. That's what that means. And I think we have a very clear track record. I think this council has a very clear track record that you have several bites at the apple, and every one of those bites includes different information and different requests. And just because we've approved, we have lots of examples of just because we've approved, for instance, a general plan, it may have ended up something very, very different in the final because you modified, you helped mold, you helped development. And Councilman, that's exactly right. I mean, this is broad with the densities, but those get narrowed in the very next step by you.
Yeah, 2 public hearings just for the zone. The next step would be the zone change.
2 more public hearings. Yeah.
Zone change. 1 here and 1 in the planning commission.
And then another public hearing on a preliminary plat to the planning commission. So we still have 3 public hearings before they'd ever put a shovel in the ground, so to speak.
You ready for a vote?
I have a motion and a second.
We got a motion and a second.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
Thank you. Move on to item C, consideration to approve an ordinance adopting zone change request C-18-08 from A20 agriculture 20 acre lots to R115 single family residence 15,000 square foot lots located at approximately 3400 south, 300 east. Applicant Dale Bennett.
Again, the 2-week holdover is complete. The item's ready for council's action on this. Just to refresh you, as the mayor said, this is currently going from the agricultural 20 to the residential single-family 15,000 square foot with the possibility of a particular area, that southwest corner being a new LDS church. The other area with the hash marks on it will be 15,000 square foot lots. You have the St. George Academy, and it pains me every time I say that, because that's not the name I would have chose, but I understand everything. But, you know, to the north, and then you have the Staley's corn maze that actually is on the east side. And I guess I did say that out loud, the painful of the academy name. But with that said, to remind you, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-18-08 to change from A20 to the R115. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that might have come to mind in our 2-week. Yeah.
There was some discussion on whether or not we put a note that this is an ag area or whatever else. Is that something that if we want to do that would need to be in a motion?
It would, but I would probably, it won't do you any good to be in this particular thing because people aren't going to go back and read where you'd want to make sure is your final plat.
Do it on the plat.
General notes would say, just to make
Butts.
all property owners
Active.
aware, you are next to an
Agriculture.
active agricultural that does have, and we can get right down to it, that has had a corn maze, every year and most likely will continue, and we can
I think if
do
you
whatever
just
we
put
want
active
to.
agriculture, that takes into
Active
effect that
agricultural.
cows are going to beller and hay's going to get baled.
Well, your corn maze,
Smells,
Yeah.
just tell us, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I say, you can say
You want to
it's,
lock the corn maze in for the next 20.
Well, it's something that it's a real, it's important to our city. It changes things. It's, that kind of, they call it ag tourism, or that it's been really important to our community. It's something that I would really hate to lose. And one thing that the Planning Commission did vote for this across the board, but they did so with an amazing amount of angst about this, knowing what was possibly going to be lost. I would really love to signal to our Planning Commission to send those thoughts back up to us. When they have that kind of angst, and I know that they're trying to work to the strictness of what they think their assignment is, but they're a part of this community and their hearts are tied into this community. I really value seeing and hearing those conversations. Love to see that passed to us in their voting and in their.
well, that's why I always encourage them to make sure they state that, because it's in the minutes.
Yeah.
It's always in the minutes, and I tell them that's where to do it. Now, let's get back to the point we talked about in this previous one. We have a general plan in place. We're following that, and that's why they have the angst, because I'm not saying their hands are tied, but you feel that, hey, I have a general plan that says I'm allowed as a property owner to come in and ask for this particular, this is very low density. Again, we're talking about densities and everything, so that's probably their angst and everything, is because they know that, hey, it meets all the standards. It meets it. They dotted all the I's, they crossed all the T's, because that's what our general plan says.
But at the same time, you're building into your city this conflict of something that you have currently and would desperately love to preserve, and something that it was really kind of a dime a dozen to get some more houses and plop it down on a piece of ground.
Yeah, the
And
challenge.
they're not the same as cows. I mean, this when you put up those lights and you put up that noise, and
Are you talking about the corn maze or the
I'm talking about the
subdivision?
corn maze. Well,
Okay, I want
Well,
those dang subdivision noises.
In talking with the Staleys, there's some corn mazes looking at some movement a little bit, which won't conflict here. over time, obviously this year, but the houses aren't going to be there this year. But I think that their futuristic planning is to move to the other side of the roadway and utilize their fields and stuff there, because they have some liability concerns with going across that roadway. And they're looking at their liabilities and start to say, I think maybe futuristically we need to stay on one side of the road.
Well, interestingly, that chips into, that's been nice to have those fields up there. My kids have played soccer on those fields. They just roll the wheels out, and it's been an amenity to our city, which has been nothing but a benefit in spite of the cows and the noise.
Well, we actually have a committee that started in this city that looking at those futuristic things, and so there's hopefully some futuristic benefits coming forward.
If we can ever get like trade for higher density, like the previous
that's what
thing
this
we
committee is
just
starting to
are
look
working
at.
on, when they go from low density to high, medium, high
Well, that's the challenge.
density,
here.
and we can't.
Yeah, but the interesting challenge here is, and I can appreciate the angst by every legislative body, but in many cases, and this case in particular, the angst is against the very property owner that sold it for that purpose, or potentially that purpose. And quite frankly, when they sell it, the property owner gets a right to. So I do absolutely agree with the note. And having come from and managed in Santaquin, we had the very same thing with orchards. And it was actually, in my opinion, just as problematic because they sprayed those trees with this, they fogged. And so we'd have children out playing and they.
He was a kid.
And so it's not a foolproof thing. There are some protections for the ag community from challenges. The state has some protections statute-wise to keep them from challenges. But again, what always is troubling to me, and I think we got to look at it case by case, is sometimes we almost feel like we know more than the landowner who says, well, wait a minute, I want that same option when the time comes that I get that option, and not have you tell me, well, I want to preserve, you have to stay there to be preserved.
Well,
that's the other side of the coin.
But you never hear any landowner complaining about that preserving the zoning of their neighbor. That's always what they have there. He bought this property knowing what the zoning is currently.
Yeah, but
he bought into this knowing that this is the zoning, and we have had an enormous amount of trouble with developers and people who are selling that property saying, look, we're not, all this stuff will go away, the cows will go away, nothing will happen here, you'll build a beautiful house, and that's just not the case. But at the end of the day, you still have power as a legislative body to dictate what the shape of your community is for the benefit of everybody, not just that one particular landowner. And he will benefit, and the people who will end up buying that will be benefited by the zoning that's around them. And if you start, there has to be some. You slide that one way or another, and everybody hates it. The land value is worth nothing if you can't stabilize some zoning and actually give people an idea that they're going to buy into some place, they're going to live there in a neighborhood that has long-term sustainable value.
And the only challenge I find with that, again, is it's very difficult because at one point, where do you take that and stop that from? When you say that the landowner itself comes in and says, I've decided alfalfa is not nearly as profitable as subdivisions to raise, and I want that changed, because essentially that's kind of what happened here. I sold it off for whatever purpose that could be down the river, wasn't restricted in any form. I mean, that's my concern, is that we get into these positions, and sometimes those positions will come back to hurt the very people we're trying to protect in some cases.
Well, laws are always that way. There's two sides to that edge every place you go.
Every coin has two sides.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we discussed back to this application, that's kind of been, I don't know, I've had a little heartache over. There was discussed that maybe we just leave the church parcel agriculture and only zone the rest. And for me, that at this point seems kind of indicative, personally. And I don't know how the rest.
Well, if the church comes in, they can come in on whatever.
They can come in on whatever parcel. I just don't see the. For me, I'm not comfortable with splitting the zoning. I know it was discussed a little bit 2 weeks ago. That's something that.
Well, I look at the church decided not to come back in. What would it come back in as?
Well,
would you not want it at R115?
They'd have to come reapply.
That's what I'm saying. Would you not want it what they're asking for?
Right.
I mean, if they were looking at an R18 or 6, something smaller that I was uncomfortable with, that said, if it didn't go in, I want to relook at something bigger than that. But R115 is is very compatible with what's there. And so to me, I'd look and say if it were to come back, I'd want it to come back as what they're asking for. So why not do it now? Church can build on anything that's out there.
I just figured I'd bring it up.
No, let's
Well, so, you know, but it goes back to this, and I am specifically talking about this issue because it brings this concept up for us. I mean, you know, there's cities, there's locations who have a special tree. It's an ancient tree or something, and you preserve that for the benefit of the community. You do trample on the rights of the landowner in order to preserve that. You have things in place in this area that many people would miss should it be gone.
There's certain things you're absolutely right there, Councilman.
And
But
so
one of
it's
the
just,
things is if it's development rights like this, then you better be prepared to buy them because you're taking it from them.
let's see, what is the current
If you
zoning
go in and say, you know
here?
what,
Ag
we want that
20.
It is
left open,
ag.
we want that left open space, then you've got to compensate them for that. Exactly.
Yeah.
The way the laws are, they have the right to develop it.
To build. So,
Personal property, and Roger, what's the terminology? They always,
I think they call it.
personal
taking.
property rights, they always have the right to pursue the highest and best use of their property.
Well, they do. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is a sliding scale of approval. And again, you start with general plans, you move to zone change, you go to preliminary plats, you end up final plats, and then of course you got a mixture of other land uses in there. So certainly the answer really is correct. I mean, at general plan and at zone change, you have a lot of latitude. You do. And there probably is less risk of a taking challenge at that end of the spectrum. As you slide along, you start running yourself into deeper problems if you don't, because there's a vesting that occurs. That's prelim. There's a vesting that occurs. Then you start running into issues where, that's why final plats, when they come in, there's usually not a lot of discussion because they've been vested a prelim and there you are. But you have some latitude in this area. That's correct. I think part of the discussion I was having earlier is more the philosophical discussion, but certainly, and it's probably not a direct answer to your question, but certainly at general plan and certainly at zone change, you have a lot of latitude with the landowner that they have no entitlement to necessarily say, I'm granted that highest and best use at this point, because this is a legislative decision.
But it's arbitrary of us to say, you know what, we just want that to stay a field.
Well, it only,
Not so much stay at field, but maintain the zoning as it is. That I don't think.
Well,
yeah, you start to run in the arbitrary clause as you slide down the scale. Because again, there is huge amounts of arbitrariness associated with general plan amendments and zone changes. You can sit and listen to the whole crowd, and the whole crowd can say, we don't want it. And you can say, I just don't think it works, so I'm voting no. And, you know, you don't have to have the same findings that you do when you start moving further down the road. And so the term arbitrary becomes stronger as you move to the other end of the scale. But I mean, I want to be clear, there's a lot of latitude in this. And again, it is a philosophy. This council, I believe other councils have said before, you know, you're asking for this, but we're not granting it.
Well, I think we need to really harden that we don't have to always give a zone change. The difficult for this one, with this one for me is that it doesn't necessarily directly affect this other property. I just see that later there's going to be conflict.
Yeah, and the
not property, but utilization, which to me is important to the city. Sorry.
Yeah, the challenge always is, of course, and I'm talking just from the legalese point of view. Shouldn't be doing that. I should have Jeff doing that. But I'm talking from that point. But the challenge always is, and it's almost personal to every council member at times, and that is, where are the property rights? What level do they float to? I mean, if a person comes in and has rightfully bought a land, does he have a right to ask for that? And how you feel about granting him that is going to be a very personal decision.
well,
And some people feel stronger on this end of the scale, and others have to move
when
further.
he bought the property and they sold it, it wasn't to keep it as a farm.
Correct.
It just was not. It was not that intent on either side to keep it as a farm. this one's awkward, but that's the reality of it. They sold and he bought, and it was not to keep it as a farm. Do we need a way in our city to preserve open spaces and find money
Well,
to do that?
and open spaces open space is a big part of that, and we're trying to address that in other ways, and I think it has its own challenges. This to me is slightly different because here you have something that I'll speak for myself, that I really would like to keep in the community. I want to preserve it, and I see that there's going to be conflict. I can hardly imagine that the neighbors, people who buy into this, maybe we should speak specifically. What steps do you take? What can you attach to this to help those people who are going to buy this in the future to realize they're going to have lights shining in there, they're going to have flies coming in from the cows, they're going to have.
There isn't.
Right.
The only way you preserve your right to what you want to have on your next door land is to buy that.
Own that piece of land.
Yeah,
That's it.
the whole line in general, I know this discussion is more general perspective overall, but.
Council Starkey, I hate to tell you your business, but will you lean into that mic?
I'm trying not to. I can tell you, over the years, there's been about 9-to-1 request that I not speak anymore. But the whole historical land use litigation and not just local judicial decisions, but Supreme Court decisions over the years, especially on these where these conflict of uses have come into play. I'll start with Del Webb years ago. Del Webb started making his first retirement communities, and they built them next to cattle yards. And the same arguments were made back then. That is, well, you knew it was a cattle yard when you came into here. So how does the city council, what right does the city council have to start to play the restriction game, especially when you start talking about because of a potential conflict that we don't even know will or won't happen, because the conflicts that happen just from developing land next to anyone who doesn't have land over there, you're always going to have a conflict of sorts. I didn't want them to build across Mall Drive because my black lab got to run all the way to Black Hill for years.
But in the end of the day, we're in the city design business. We are in the business of making sure that the city is livable, safe, all the things that people want in a city, and that's a big part.
No question. Do you see this as a conflict with that?
Well, I'm struggling with this, and I'm enjoying the conversation because I see that we as a city council, we as a city ought to be more prepared, because we're going to see more issues like this that will take away things that are very important to us. And in the end of the day, what does it gain you if you lose everything you cared about in the city anyways?
The design business, though, is very limited. And we're one of the few countries that have this limitation, and that is absolutely constitutionally protected private property. And so that's the balance. That is a terribly difficult challenge for legislators all over the place to say, we are design, but we're not central designers. We're not like other places that can centrally design, because we got this whole component that is a property right now. The law has codified what you can and can't do with some of that. And so, the public needs to recognize that at times. They think, well, why didn't the council just deny it or approve it, when in fact you may be even prohibited or required to do something. But even beyond that.
So we did away with the feudal system, is that what you're saying?
If you want more central planning, that's probably what you got to do. But that's the $10 billion question.
Or the futile system.
Every legislative body deals with it. It is a challenge. You're right, Cal. It is. It's a tough balance.
Just to think about, and part of this is because for 30 years I've watched all these small communities down here go through the same process, especially with their agricultural land and the open spaces related to it, and how every subdivision, this for 30 years I've seen this come in every community in this county. The current homeowner said, I moved to Hurricane because I thought that this was going to be almond orchards forever, or I would have moved from California, and that it stayed the same just for those moving in. But in this particular case, for example, would we have had the same concern about, would we have had the same concern if nobody had said, I want to make sure that I can have the corn maze. I don't want somebody to sue us later on because we have a corn maze here. What if nobody had? What if the property, the one that actually sold the property came and said, I don't care. I sold it and I knew it.
My only
That brought some of
clarification.
this issue up, I think, and I don't know where we make that distinction every time.
My only
I'm glad I don't vote.
clarification that I want, thanks. My only clarification on this particular property is if we do put into the notes that this is active agriculture, is the things were brought up by Sherry Tate and Mike Tate and Catherine Staley. Obviously, active irrigation, tailwater irrigation in backyards, creatures do what they want. One thing that Catherine Staley brought up is they've had 50 years of complaints. And by putting in the active agriculture, does that give them any type of a legal protection of not being sued or anything like that that happens on the
Well,
property?
certainly not anything that's negligent. So if you flood the property and it's negligent, like I said, there are statutes within the state, and I'm not familiar with all of them, that give some liability protection to agriculture, kind of gives them an umbrella. But the reality is we can put a lot of notes on. Really, a lot of those notes end up being just an FYI that you need to be fully informed that you're moving into this area, which by the way may change tomorrow because they may sell that piece off and you're not in that area anymore. But the point is that most of those are almost FYI. And if there's negligence, I don't know how a court's going to say I'm not going to dismiss it because there was a note on that for negligence.
Because I'm just wondering the value
The
of
reason
that.
we put notes, I mean, that's the point. So I'm not sure if your question was, does that avoid potential liability for
The people who are, no, just for the people who are continuing to
do.
do the active agriculture next door.
Well, and again, notes are what they are. From my perspective, always, we put notes on these things because we do want to tell people we haven't. Here's an argument that you can't make against us. You had no clue whatsoever. We tried to put a note on it. That's an argument. Do we lock a court in? If I thought that we had any near the gall or the I don't know, the arrogance to think that we could just draft land use laws like our legislators do it up at the state legislature, they can draft those laws and say, boom, we're going to draft the law.
I'm satisfied with that response.
We have
That
no
works for
authority,
me.
but notes are great to an extent. To some extent, you put too many notes and everybody expects you to cover you for everything that's ever happened. And that's what I start worrying. We put too many notes. This wouldn't be too many in this case. I don't.
Yeah, I think we've had a great discussion. I think it's been fantastic, but we need to move forward.
Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready to receive one.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we approve the ordinance adopting zone change request Z-18-08 from agricultural A20, 20-acre lots to R115 single-family residential.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second.
Board name.
Clough, nay.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
And that passes 3-2. Move on to item 10, property acquisition. Consideration to approve the purchase of real property and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents between State Institutional Trust Land Association in Washington City. Property is located near the new water tank.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. With the construction of our new water tank, we purchased the ground for the water tank probably about 10 years ago, knowing that we'd be building a tank here really soon. Doesn't want to come up. In your packet, you actually have the exhibits and the agreement with Sitla. With that, with the partial burying of the tank, we've actually had to run over the property that we acquired. So we've come up to Sitla and asked to purchase a little more property around that tank to cover that area that we needed for the fencing at the toe of the slope. With that, we need to acquire 0.277 acres at a cost of $16,500. Sitla's also asking us to cover the appraisal cost and any closing cost associated with it. The appraisal come in $1,250, and I'm not sure what any other closing costs might be on that. So we're requesting the council give us the approval to move forward and the mayor being able to sign the agreement.
Sorry. What was the grand total on that, Mike?
16,500 for the property and then 1,250. So 18,750.
That 18,750 for the appraisal and the land, but that doesn't include the closing, so it's
Yeah,
a little open.
yeah, it could be maybe up to possibly 20,000.
So then a motion would
Not
be
to exceed.
not to exceed, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not sure. What would have happened had the property owner not wanted to sell to us? We
wouldn't have done the bury on the tank. We'd left the tank completely exposed. This actually helps us. The bury on the tank helps us with aesthetics but mainly for temperature of water.
We've already done all that, right?
We have.
Was it a little risky to do that before owning the property there? And
Well, yeah, I can always go remove the dirt.
is that all we're risking there?
Yeah.
So when you say the burial of that, you're talking about just
Mounding dirt up.
Mounding
the
dirt
side
up around
of
the
it?
tank, yes.
So what is the alternate plan then if you can't acquire the property?
Then we just remove the dirt and expose the tank.
Air condition the tank.
Yeah, it heats the water up in the tank, and warm water promotes bacteria growth.
I'm sorry.
More heat promotes that, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So Mike, but I mean, you've been in discussions with SIPA on this issue for some time.
No, not really. About a month.
That's a fair question.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
I
we
think
were,
really what he
we
was
were,
asking,
we
you
were
knew that Sittler was gonna
presumptuous.
sell. I think what he's asking is, how'd you know this council was gonna authorize?
We
you
were
to
a little
spend it?
presumptuous, I guess. we could
Well,
say.
unless I'm pretty comfortable with what the council's gonna go on this, I'm just a little nervous about what if the landowner did, because you can't really control that. You can come back to us and beg all you want. We will
The
probably give you.
landowner ordered the appraisal.
Yeah.
Well, I know the landowner ordered the appraisal.
Well,
I'm just
yeah, I think he buried it
nervous
after knowing that Sittler was approving it, correct?
Yeah, we didn't even stop. We really didn't even start the burial of the tank until we had discussions with them on it.
Sittler, yeah.
Well, that was my question.
It's usually, it's
Well,
usually,
You're talking about you know us, but Sittler, I mean, they could have something else run in between there
well,
and some
yeah,
other.
it's useless ground. They can't develop it.
Okay.
They have no water pressure. So none of this ground could be developed for housing unless they want to build another tank up in the habitat, which won't happen.
Oh, lots of things happening.
Yeah.
Never seen that.
Seems like I said never once. so-
Well, the habitat line goes right up around the tank, so there's, and the land drops off very quickly from those tanks.
Okay, ready for motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
All right, I move approval of up to $20,000 consideration for purchase of property and executing those documents and paying for the appraisal and closing costs.
Second.
I have a motion, a second.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ward, aye.
Thank you. Anything to report from your assigned committees?
Mayor, I'll give a report from our MPO meeting, just briefly to update the council that the discussion is being had between our MPO and private entities to move the Springdale to St. George Transit system towards a possible public-private partnership. And so they have formed a subcommittee to put together an RFP proposal of that. The ultimate goal is that, if you'll recall, we were awarded $15 million from UDOT for the first 5 years of the operation of that transit system, which was contingent upon the cities to agree to then make sure that it was funded for the next 5 years. So a total of 10 years of operation. This proposal will take that liability away. The goal is to take the liability away for the taxpayers and move it to a private entity to where that liability then becomes a private business there that keeps this transit system, accomplishes the goal of the MPO and UDOT and using those funds, and moves our people around without the liability falling back onto the taxpayer. So that's where we're going. I'll keep you appraised as to when that RFP comes forward and kind of what happens. But we had a presentation from St. George Shuttle, kind of where they thought that they some of the rider fares and some of those things would fall, and it seemed very billable to the MPO. So we're going to move forward looking at that RFP. So.
With respect to the solid waste board that I sit on, there's a couple of things happening. One, with the recycle program, there's some growing pains with some of a lot of the commodities that get sold. The market has kind of dropped out on those, and so there's some growing pains with what happens with the recycle programs. So there's a little bit of a wait and see, but a lot of the paper was purchased through China, and China has changed their policy and not allowing some of that in. And so we're building some of those paper products. We're looking for a new purchaser of that. The other one though is the Washington landfill, and I sent some photos to the council on the status of it. They're supposed to be finishing up that earthwork and mitigation of the old landfill over the next couple of days. It's being taken out to current landfill.
Any surprises?
Yeah, they found a car. They found a lot of junk, a lot of tires. I mean, no Jimmy Hoffa, but there's a lot of interesting debris. Actually, if you go walk through it, you can find old bottles from the 50s, and if you can find some that are not broken, they're kind of cool. But I wouldn't encourage any of the public to go running through the landfill and start digging. They're moving roughly 3,000 yards a day to the landfill, which is an extreme amount. The solid waste board, after SITLA got into it, or State Trust got into it, when they thought that they were going to be close to break even, they actually turned out that they were going to be going in the red significantly on mitigating the old landfill. So they went to the solid waste board. The solid waste board agreed to reduce the tipping fees because they're not having to deal with administration. They're not having to deal with, a lot of the placement. They're not having to deal with things that would be normally considered costs. So they've reduced those tipping fees.
What's the tipping fee there? Help me on that.
For every ton of material that goes to the landfill, it costs $26.88, something like that. Of that, $16.44 goes to Republic because they run the landfill. The remainder goes to the solid waste district. So the solid waste has reduced their amount because they don't have the admin side. They don't have those costs. And they're working with Republic to get them to reduce their side because, had we moved all this material over a period of 2 years, they would have put it in and placed it. But because it's such a fast move, State Trust has actually hired somebody to do all the placing. And so State Trust is technically getting hit twice. Republic charges for the placement, but they're not doing the placement. State Trust is hired an outside firm to do the placement to fill in. So we're working to get those fees reduced, but that at least puts the State Trust back into a black scenario instead of a red scenario, which I thought that was the right thing to do. So, and it gets rid of the landfill, the liability, the indemnification issues that we had, and also the public health issues that were potential. So.
Good.
That HCAC meetings, I've got to several of them. Anyway, we're at the point where it's pretty much approval for some bike racks. They're going to identify one more trailhead, so there'll be 4 to go out into that area. A technical committee doesn't really, at least a couple of members don't want to hear anything about improving roads, and we're trying to use the access that we already have to the wellheads to use as an opportunity to maybe fix where it goes down in the sand someplace. But it's a discussion we can easily have with the HCAC people. It's not a good discussion to have with the technical people because one more vehicle out there, even if it's a bike, is
One
gonna
too many.
destroy some turtles. So
Yeah.
that's they tabled that this week, and I expect it'll come up again in a couple of weeks. And even if the technical committee gets antsy about it, I think HCAC will still approve it, but we're not there yet. So that's where we're at.
I have not met with any of my assigned committees since last time, so I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you.
I have a new council and student council today.
I'm going to forgo any comment either. Councilman Turk was rubbing his head last time I was talking, and I think,
I do have one quick question following up with Councilman Belliston. I'm interested at the part, which environmental agency was going to come and look at that? It wasn't the EPA, it's the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality or something, right?
Yeah, probably Department of Environmental Quality, but DEQ is the organization that oversees landfills and refuse and things like that.
Right, because I'm just interested at their sign off part when they say all's good. That's the part that I would really love to hear or see or be there when that all happens.
You know, it's actually quite the operation because I went out there today and went with Aaron Langston from State Trust. So we stopped at the old Washington landfill and we took some photos that I sent and he showed how they were moving it. As fast as you could get a truck in there, it would get loaded. And they were the double haulers.
Yeah.
It would get loaded inside of 2 minutes. There was a water truck right behind it, keeping the dust suppression down. And another truck was right behind that. And there was a constant steady stream. So you always had 2 to 3 trucks being loaded. And then as quickly at the landfill, they went through a different gate. So they didn't go through the main gate. They went around to where the cell is that they're placing the material. They never stopped. The truck would come up, he'd side dump it as he's rolling. He rolled back on out. There was a D6 cat pushing it in, and there was a roller doing the compacting. And I mean, it was a well-oiled machine. They were moving material fast. Wow. So they really wanted to get that done quick. And, 40,000 yards inside of 2 weeks is a lot of dirt to move. At least, the neat thing about it is for the residents and neighbors that live there, it's not a 6-month process. It's quick. It's a 2-week process. And, it's a good deal for the neighborhood.
No, we don't seem to have someone here complaining about it, so it seems like they're.
I've talked to a few people that have just been blown away at the process so far, how fast it's going through. So.
And Aaron met with the neighborhood the night before last to update them, tell them what's going on. They were appreciative of that.
Was that vehicle they found, a 38 Ford pickup?
Kind of hard to tell what it is. But
It had your plates.
Did it have my plates on it?
It said hot rod.
It said pistol on it?
Oh, pistol, that's what it was. I thought it was hot rod, but it's pistol.
Just go.
Pistol Pete. Pistol Pete.
Pistol right next to Hellhole, huh?
Yeah. All right, thank you all for your report. So we'll have a city manager report, and then we will move on to a closed session to discuss purchase, exchange, or lease of property.
I just really have a couple of things that I'd bring up. We're working on the draft design for the 1900 East Lift Station on our sewer project. We'll give you a road update a little later on. You may have been aware of this is a doomed street. So we're trying to figure out what to do over there. If you remember on 300, we once again, Burton Lumber pulled down. So Burton Lumber caught Burton Lumber caught the cable line and pulled a pole over yesterday. So that's the same street we had a month or so ago. The lines go down, and so
How far north was that? Was that
just right beyond Rigatti's? Just north of there.
Right in that same area? So
Yeah, just one pull down.
Really, one pole down?
Yeah, they caught it. They were trying to make a U-turn, caught that cable line, and they knew. I mean, they was there. They were there. It became obvious. That was about four. We had about 5 or 6 customers, which was actually pretty good. They were able to reroute some, but I only mention that because it's just that street is just cursed right now.
I think that's Judge Bundle over there. I think
It is
that's
Judge
kind of-
Bundle. I'll tell you when we had but I'll tell you this funny story. When we had the 3 lines go down a couple months ago, it did not stop Judge Bundle 1 minute from painting that garage out there. He had 2 power lines down on each side of him, and he's out there painting the garage. So, you know, he's tough as nails, that judge. I also thought I would give you an update real quick because we did meet with Dr. Blodgett yesterday. Dr. Blodgett is the Southwest Health. You probably saw in our last press release that with the additional testing of the virus that was associated with the E. coli breakout, that it was not traced at all to the Mill Creek waters.
Did they find out where it was?
They don't, and it could have been foodborne. And of course, by the time it goes through the incubation process, there's no food. He made it very clear that it's still puzzling and they probably will never exactly know. Now, again, E. coli is always there. He told us, it was very interesting, as a matter of fact, there's about 200 plus strains of E. coli. We all have 2,000. We all have it in our body. It's in all open waters, but there's only about 5 that are dangerous.
Yeah.
And so they can fingerprint these. And then that's why it takes a little additional time. They can fingerprint these and then kind of trace them back. And we were very pleased with the fact that it did not trace back to the Mill Creek waters. We also have been made aware, we don't know who they are, but we've also been made aware that the 2 children have been released. And so that's good news. Now, we will be, and we'll do this very kind of tastefully, I think, and not to be fearful, to create fear, but we will probably, and this is kind of what we do, we risk mitigate a lot of times. We will probably post maybe at the head portion and the lower portion, just that these are, just a reminder, these are non-potable waters and please don't ingest or drink them. And again, we don't want to overly fear people because that is a major feature and has been forever. And there isn't any reason, and even Southwest Health didn't feel there was really any reason to take it beyond that. But we think it's just good caution also to just remind people that not to just dip down in there and, or to maybe warn your children, don't drink it. Again, even though it's not.
Drinks that water. Probably why it's 87.
Yeah, his dad drinks
My dad
it.
drinks that water at the house.
That comes out of the nerd spring.
No, he drink.
Yeah, my dad drinks irrigation. He drinks it.
The only other thing I would bring up.
He's 87.
I drank it growing up. I heard
I clean out my irrigation lines and I don't drink it.
This was a good old open ditch. It wasn't your
Hey,
lines. It was open
Councilman,
ditch.
he doesn't clean his
Yeah,
ditches
it's open
either.
ditch.
He, right in his back porch, he just sticks his head in there and digs.
And he is 87. It still might be the cause of his final demise, but he is 87 at the moment.
The fountain of life.
The only other thing I'd bring up, and I mention this because you guys play a major influence on this, and in some cases already have. We're pretty pleased for the most part with our Facebook discussion page. Well, I'm not even gonna say pretty much. We're pleased with the Facebook discussion page. We're growing. It's gonna take some time. I gave them a fairly steep goal by December. It's pretty steep. They're probably not gonna quite hit it. But we want to encourage people to get on that forum because this is a forum that is monitored by the community. We also look at this as a discussion forum, which means that we allow discussion. And sometimes if you've watched the Facebook discussion page, we think our citizens do a marvelous job of answering the questions. And then sometimes we don't even intervene. And they've been very supportive. But what we would encourage you as council to do, and I think this would be great, we know that you guys participate in other forums, and that's great. If you could also try in your postings in those other forums, even if you could try to refer them back, because that will grow those people who want to. So you don't need to go this far, but I'll just give an example. If you were to post and say, oh, I responded to that, please link to such and such to see the response. Because we want to grow those numbers. I told you that one of the things, this has been a priority of the council for a little while too. So you guys have primarily driven this communication medium. But I remember talking to a couple of citizens one time, and it became apparent why this is important. Is because the citizens said, you know, I just didn't know where to reach out, and I thought this was the official city Facebook page. And we've always had a Facebook page, but not a discussion type of group page. We've had comments and other things, but this is more geared around that. We also recognize that there are a lot of voices in the public square, which means that sometimes if they don't ask questions, they just make a statement. We don't necessarily respond to that. We allow that statement to sit there. That's public square. And we tried to answer, but we try not to necessarily answer like that either. We try to give it time to have discussion. And we actually have got this new dialogue that I've asked them to develop, because occasionally you can tell when somebody gets tense because 10 minutes later there wasn't a post by the city on their response. That we have a nice thing that just we'll probably put in more of our direction portion that just kind of simply says, please remember that if you want immediate response, we encourage you to contact directly Washington City for an immediate response. This is a discussion page, so we like to have discussion occur. It's very well written. But you council members will be really crucial because people want to hear from you. And I know some of you are more active, some of you not as active, but if you could try to push people that direction, that would be great. It's a good forum. People have been very, very polite, very courteous and civil for the most part, and good questions. Oh, anyway, I think that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and go to the closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Let's get on the record. Did discuss what the reasons were.
I did already,
Okay.
but we'll do it again. Closed session to discuss and purchase, exchange, or lease of property. Thank you, council. Councilman Clough.
Is there a second on it?
I second it.
Second. Turek, aye.
Bellis, aye.
Granger, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
All right. Have a great evening. I'm putting up the signs for the Lions. There you go. I think we're in section.
Doing good. Thanks so much. Oh, really? Appreciate you.
How you doing?
I'm sitting, you can see it.
At least the property to Connor Atkin and Quinn Ogden to do a car wash.
Oh, I seen that car wash sign come up.
Across from there.
So is that the part he's talking to selling, or is he talking the field down